In this next video, we're going to discuss the accessory structures of the digestive system, which include the salivary glands, which we've already covered, the pancreas, the liver, and the gallbladder. So accessory structures are structures that aid in digestion, but food doesn't actually pass through them. In other words, they're not part of the alimentary canal. So we'll start with the pancreas. So the pancreas is often described as looking like a tadpole, and the structures of the pancreas are described with this in mind. We have the head, the body, and the tail. The pancreatic duct takes the secretions from the pancreas and carries them to the common bile duct, which then carries those secretions into the small intestine. Now we've discussed the pancreas and its role in the endocrine system with the hormones insulin and glucagon in the chapter earlier on the endocrine system. But in this chapter, we're going to focus on the exocrine functions, or the digestive juices and other chemicals the pancreas secretes as an exocrine structure. So it's both an endocrine and an exocrine structure. So the pancreas makes several different chemicals that play a role in digestion. They are pancreatic amylase, the hormone, the enzyme that breaks down glycogen into disaccharides, or helps digest sugar. Pancreatic lipase is the enzyme that breaks down triglycerides, or fats. Trypsin, chymotrypsin, and carboxypeptidase are enzymes that play a role in digesting proteins, and nucleases, which help digest nucleic acids in our food. The final chemical that is in the pancreatic juices is bicarbonate ions. As you recall, from the stomach, there's hydrochloric acid, which lowers the pH to a range of 1 to 3, which is where the enzymes in the stomach work best. But the enzymes in the small intestine, they work best at a slightly alkaline pH, so we need to raise the pH, and the bicarbonate ions absorb the extra hydrogen ions and raise the pH to the optimal level for the enzymes in the small intestine to do their job. As far as controlling when they're released, it's primarily the result of the acidic chyme, which is the acid and enzymes in food from the stomach entering the small intestine, causing a hormone called secretin to be released, which then causes the pancreas to release the pancreatic juices. Next, we'll talk about the liver. The liver is the largest internal organ, and it's divided into 4 lobes. There's a right lobe and a left lobe. There's also a quadrate and a caudate lobe. The liver is also the only organ that is able to regenerate. In other words, if we had to remove part of someone's liver because of a tumor or something, the missing piece would actually regenerate. Now, it may not look exactly like the liver did before, but it will have functioning tissue, and it's the only internal organ that's capable of doing that. So the liver has a variety of functions, many of which are not related to digestion, but since we're talking about the liver, we'll talk about each of the functions here. First, it plays a role in storing sugar, producing glycogen from glucose in response to insulin. Breaking glycogen back into glucose, or raising blood sugar, in response to glucagon. Converting non-carbohydrates to glucose for energy used by cells. Oxidizing fatty acids, which again is important for using energy or creating energy for cells to do their jobs. Synthesizing lipoproteins, phospholipids, and cholesterol, which are important parts of cell membranes. Converting carbohydrates and proteins into fat. When we have excess carbohydrates and proteins or sugars, they can be stored as fats. Deaminating amino acids, which is important for using proteins as a last resort for energy for cells. Forming urea, which is the breakdown of proteins waste product, which is one of the main components of urine, which we have to get rid of. We'll talk about that later. Synthesizing various plasma proteins, which we talked about what those are in the chapter on blood. Converting amino acids from one type to another. Sometimes we don't get the right kind of amino acids in our diet to build the proteins that we need, so sometimes our liver can convert amino acids from one type to another type. storing glycogen we mentioned earlier, but also storing vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin B12, storing iron, and also storing some blood. Breaking down old red blood cells through phagocytosis or detoxifying foreign substances is another function of the liver. Sometimes when we have too many of these toxins, it can lead to cirrhosis of the liver, or basically part of the liver tissue dying off, and that's a common side effect of alcoholism. Like I said, removing toxins from the blood. And the one that does play an important role in actually digesting our food, the liver produces a chemical and secretes a chemical called bile. Now, bile doesn't actually digest anything. It's not an enzyme, but it emulsifies fats. In other words, it breaks down large pieces of fat into smaller pieces so there's more surface area for the lipases and other enzymes to break down our fats, so then we can absorb them and use them for various functions in the body. So bile is like most of the substances in our body. It's water. There are the bile salts, which are important for the emulsification, but also play a role in absorbing fatty acids, cholesterol, and fat-soluble vitamins from our food. Bile pigments, which cause bile to be green, but also as bile goes through the digestive tract, it turns into a brownish pigment, which colors the feces. There's some cholesterol, but not much. There are some electrolytes as well. So once the liver produces bile, it's going to store the bile in a sac underneath the liver called the gallbladder. And it's actually green because of the bile pigments. And then the bile is going to release the bile is going to be released from the gallbladder when the food enters the stomach with fat in it, so the body can digest that more efficiently. And so it goes from the liver to the gallbladder through the hepatic duct, and from the gallbladder to the small intestine through the common bile duct, which merges with the pancreatic duct. Bile is released when fatty chyme, or chyme containing fats, enters the small intestine and causes the gallbladder to release bile. Now, sometimes people can get gallstones or crystals that form in the gallbladder and block the bile duct, and oftentimes that results in them having to have their gallbladder removed, so they don't have stored bile. Instead, they only have the bile that's being made currently by the liver, so they have to change their diet because they're not able to digest fats as well as they once were.